welcome. I'm so glad you're joining me today. This is Preeti, and we are going to make two very clean and simple Christmas card using the two stamp sets that I showed you. This is the sentiment stamp set for Christmas that I really like using all the time for the Christmas cards that I make, and I'm going to use the same one again. And I'm choosing this Merry Christmas, and I've gone ahead and stamped and embossed it using gold embossing powder onto a white cardstock. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this like a long post-it tape, and I'm going to just mask off the top edge of the sentiment, creating a straight line. I'm kind of taking reference from my glass mat underneath to see that I am adhering it straight, and then I'm going to place it into my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp the sentiments from the stamp set. The stamp set that I'm using is called Winter Wonderland, which was actually released last year for Christmas. And I'm also taking these color fuse inks here in really light colors. The colors that I've chosen is Beachside and I think it's called Posy. And I'm going to use the Beachside, which is a light aqua color, for the pine branches here. And I'm just going to stamp them on the upper side of the post-it note. Also, be aware that this post-it is not long enough. It's just about an inch wide. So I want to make sure that I'm not stamping underneath the post-it, but just above the post-it. Also, my sentiment is not completely covered at the bottom. If you can see, there's a gold sparkle that you can see of that embossing. Now all I'm doing is I'm alternating between the pine bows as well as the berries in the stamp set in the two different colors that I showed. And I'm going to repeat this process once I'm done on this side. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side in a little while. You will see that. And here I'm stamping the last bit, and I just needed to add one more bow right there just to make sure that I'm filling up the space. And once I'm done with that, I'm just going to remove this poster. You can see that I've stamped it in a pretty good line, straight line, right above the sentiment. And I'm going to do the same thing underneath the sentiment. Again, making sure that I'm adhering this poster tape in the same straight linear way, so there's no wonkiness. And here I've gone ahead and stamped it the same way at the bottom as well. Now it's time to color. Now you don't have to color, you can leave it just like that. It's gonna look beautiful, but you want to add, if you want to add dimensions and you want to make it a little bit more extra special, then go ahead, pull out your colors. I have pulled out my Copic markers here, and I'm going to add the darkest color, which is BG18, into places where I think there would be shadows. That means to say, if there is a pine needle that is above another pine needle, then make sure there's a cast shadow right underneath it, and things like that. So I'm just trying to make sure that I'm placing those shadow areas, and then I'm just going to blend that using BG15, and I'm going to blend the BG15 later on with BG11. Now, I'm going to show you a simpler way of coloring the pine branches as well. If you don't want to get so complicated by adding shadows and stuff like that, you can definitely start off by adding the darkest color in the center of the pine branch and feathering it out from there. So here I'm just continuing to do that for the first bow, and as I said earlier, I'm going to take BG11 and I'm going to just blend the remaining color onto the white of the cardstock. And you can see that the pine branch or the bow of the pine really looks like this. Like you can see this dimensions and textures playing out with that little that little bow. Now I'm going to show you the simpler way that I was talking about. Sorry, my hand seems to be covering everything that I'm doing. Probably my camera was not in the right angle. So you can see here, what I'm doing is, I'm just taking the darkest color, which is BG18, and laying it in the center of the pine bow. And from there, I'm blending it out with BG15. And from there, I will blend that out with BG11. So that is the easier way of doing it. And of course, it's going to be faster if you're trying to do multiple cards. Here's the thing, you don't necessarily have to do the coloring in different shades. You can just take a solid color and just color them all solid blue or green or whatever you choose, and it's going to look beautiful. The idea that I'm trying to say here is you can either just stamp it using one color, you can use your color pencils, you can use your Copic markers to color it, or just do a solid color of each of them, and this is going to look beautiful just as is, because you're trying to make it look like printed print, like the print cardstocks or print cards that you get during Christmas in the stores. That's the idea behind it. So you don't necessarily have to do all these detail blending and stuff like that. It's just me, I love to do that, but to make it simple and to create this into a mass producing card, you can definitely keep that as an option. I went ahead and colored the berries using some red colors, R29, 24 and 22. And here you can see I've completed everything exactly the same way. Now I'm taking this gold Posca pen, which is a paint pen, and I'm just adding a few dots in the berry centers, like the tops of the berries. And I'm also going to take this white gel pen and add some highlights underneath the top of the berries, just to kind of create a little bit of, you know, extra effect onto the berries. So here again, I'm just adding some dots in the center of the berry tops, and then right underneath the berry tops, I'm going to add that white highlight just to show some shine on that berry. And once I'm done with all that, I'm just going to go back with my gold Posca pen that I showed earlier, and I'm going to add some dots, just tiny dots, sprinkling here and there. I want to bring in, the reason I'm using this gold pen is just to bring out the gold embossing that I've done in the center. And then I'm also going to take this pen and draw a very squiggly line. This is not a straight line, just a squiggly line underneath those two berry panels that we created earlier. And that kind of brings in everything together. And then all that is left to do is adhere this to a white side folding note card. And I'm just going to add a few little blinks to this card. Really, this card comes together so fast and quick. I think it's a pretty easy card to mass produce. You can just go ahead and you can multiple stamp your pine boughs and berries easily onto. And that, sorry, as I was battling around, that was the first card that we completed. For the second card here, I've gone ahead and taken a white cardstock and embossed and cut out this sentiment which says "Have a holly jolly Christmas." Actually, I was just listening to the song while I was creating this card. Anyway, so all I'm doing is I'm placing that sentiment that I stamped and embossed and cut into the center of another white cardstock, and I'm just going to draw in a reference line of that panel. And then I'm going to just add some more elements. This time I'm using this is what, holly berries, the holly leaves. And again, I'm going to take green color fuse ink, and I'm using the lightest one, and that is called Moss, to stamp my leaves. And again, I'm using the same coral posy color for my berries, and I'm going to place these leaves going in a diagonal way from this corner, from the left corner to the right corner, and you will see what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to stamp these as images using my color fuse ink. Here's the thing, color fuse inks works perfectly with Copic markers. I don't see any bleeding when I use my Copic markers when I'm using color fuse inks. They work perfectly. And then also, because I'm using colors that I'm using, the colors that I've chosen for the stamping as well as for coloring are very similar. The end result looks like you've done no line coloring. You know what I'm saying? So really, you don't have, sometimes no line coloring, when you use really light, foggy or grayish colors, sometimes you can't see those no lines or lines, and it makes it hard to color. But if you choose a color fuse ink in the lighter shade of your markers that you're going to use, it's so much more easier, and the result looks like no line coloring. I hope that makes sense. I really hope it's making sense when I'm talking about it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do here is I've taken a few green shades here. So started off with G28 and blending that with G17. I'm starting from the center of the leaves, going outwards to the top edge of the leaf. And then I'm going to blend that with G05, and I'm going to blend G05 with G03. So I'm doing two tones of leaves here. This is the darker hue of the leaf. So this one has G28, as I said, as my darkest color. But for the second leaf, there are multiple leaves here. So I'm just going to kind of, not to have all of them in the same color. I'm just kind of playing around with the color tone. So here all I'm doing is I've skipped the G28 and I'm going to start with G17 as my darkest color. Same way, adding the darkest to the center of the leaf. And then I'm going to blend that with G05. And then I'm going to blend that with G03 and then complete that with G00. G00 almost has like an aqua hue to it, to the green. So it kind of tones down the color of the leaf from being that vibrant green to this bluish green. I really hope it makes sense, but it does look what I'm saying. I hope the video shows you what I'm saying too. And then I'm going to color the berries exactly like how I colored in the previous card, just adding R29 to the bottom, which is the darkest area of the berry. And then I'm going to take R24, blend the R29 and go all around the berry with R24, and then blend the center with R22. Here you go. That pretty much created the berry. So I'm not doing any fancy blending or shading or anything. And then I'm taking this E25 just to add a few branches. Just to add the stalks of the berries. And I've here gone ahead and completed all the coloring. Now I'm taking that same gold pen and all I'm doing is I'm adding the vein lines of the leaves in the center. So you can see when I stamped, the vein lines kind of disappeared because of the green colors that we used. So I'm just going to highlight that vein lines with the gold because I want to bring in that gold from the gold embossing sentiment to the card panel itself. I really hope it makes sense. I kind of like to pull colors that I use in different elements. So not too many colors in this cards here. So you can see in this card there's only green and red, and the other one was aqua and red. And we're doing the same thing again, adding the dots with the gold for the berries and then adding some highlights using the white ink pen or gel pen. And all that is left to do is add the sentiment, which will be here. Oh, I needed to erase those pencil lines that we created. You don't want to keep that pencil line there. So I've just gone ahead and erased that. And now I'm going to take that sentiment panel that we created earlier and I'm going to tear that using some foam adhesive to the back. And once I'm done, I'm just going to place it in the center and you can see how beautiful and simple this card is. Again, another one of those cards that you can easily mass produce. Don't necessarily have to do all the shading and stuff like that. Keep it solid and add some gemstones, add some sprinkling of gold using your gold pen, add those details with your gold pen, and I promise you it's going to look beautiful. You don't have to do all this blending. Anyway, so now I've just gone ahead, I'm doing the same thing, adding those dots using the gold pen. Keep in mind, those dots need to be in different sizes. That's what adds texture. That's what adds interest. And that pretty much would come, the panel is completely done. Now all that's left to do is I'm going to just take this panel and I'm going to adhere it directly using liquid glue onto the stop folding white note card. Just using simple liquid glue, keeping the card really basic, very easy to mail, and as you see here, they're so simple and easy to create. I really hope you give these cards a go, and give us a thumbs up if you like the video, subscribe to our channel, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.